wish you a good evening. All of those of you practicing in the Buddhist religion. I'll give you some advice tonight on some ways and techniques to use in meditation, with techniques to help calm your mind, make your mind peaceful. Because if you don't understand how to calm your mind, make your mind peaceful, then your mind is weak or without energy. As long as your mind is not peaceful and is lacking energy, then it will chase after moods and sense objects. The Buddha thus gave us, his disciples, various techniques, methods for quietening the mind through meditation. The very beginning of meditation is to practice mindfulness of breathing, the in-breaths and the out-breaths. Everybody breathes, so it's an object that's very convenient and practical to use for meditation. Merely establish mindfulness on the in-breaths and the out-breaths. You don't have to force the breath to be any way. You don't have to force the breath to be shorter or longer than usual. Even though there are many of us sitting here together, try to imagine as if you're sitting sitting alone. There's no one else around. As you're practicing mindfulness of breathing, the mind will tend to run away, stray away from the breath and go thinking about all sorts of different things. Try to keep re-establishing mindfulness on the breath, and when you are mindful of an in-breath, then you can count 1. And when you breathe out, then count 1, just the same, 1 in-breath, 1 out-breath. And then a second in-breath, count 2, second out-breath, count 2. Another in and another out-breath, count 3. And count an in-breath and out-breath is 4. Another in and out-breath is 5. Having reached 5, you could go back to 1 again after the 5th in and out breath. Then the next in and out breath, count 1 again, back up to 5. Having gone up to 5, then maybe the next in and out breath, count 6 and 7 and so on. And go up to 10. Then go back after the 10th in and out breath, go back the next in breath, out breath, count 1 again. This is a simple technique for establishing mindfulness on the breathing. Having practiced like that, if your mind is still not very peaceful, it's still very confused or agitated, thinking a lot, then try taking in a very, very deep breath until you've completely filled your lungs with air, and then let all that air out again. And repeat this, do this 3 times, take 3 deep breaths and let them out again. Don't try and force the breath. Try and find a posture that is comfortable, alert but comfortable, and find a rhythm for the breath that is comfortable. If you keep practicing like this, counting the breaths, up to 10, back, and then back to 1 again. Repeat the exercise, the mind will gradually calm down, and as it becomes one-pointed and peaceful, then that process of counting will stop all by itself, and the mind will settle on will be mindful on the breath by itself. As the mind calms down and becomes peaceful, there will just be the knowing of the breath. As there's an in-breath, there's the knowing of it. As there's an out-breath, there's the knowing of it. The mind won't be thinking about anything else or lost in thoughts, proliferations. There'll just be the knowing of the in-breath and the out-breath. As the mind becomes peaceful and mindfulness is established consistently on the breaths, the in-breath, the out-breath, then you might start to experience different things, different feelings within the body and the mind. These experiences you start to have as the mind becomes peaceful. For example, you might experience goosebumps, like your hairs stand on end. Feelings, the body feels very light and at ease, relaxed. Maybe tears start to form in the eyes, start to shed tears. Maybe you have the feeling as if waves breaking on a shore within your body, the feeling waves sweeping over the body and breaking on a shore. Or very, very pleasant feelings, the body feels very, very light, the body and the mind feel very light, as if you're floating on air, maybe even floating up to the ceiling, and your body seems to fill the entire room that you're sitting in. In the language of the Dhamma, these phenomena we call piti. There are 5 different kinds of piti. What it means when these different experiences of piti manifest in the mind, it means the mind will be very content with the meditation object. It'll be interested in that meditation object, be very happy to be meditating. But the way to practice is to just keep establishing mindfulness on the breathing, the in and out breathing, the feeling of the breath as it becomes more refined. You don't have to interest yourself in these different experiences of piti. Let them take place by themselves, but you don't have to make anything out of them. When one experiences piti to its fullest extent, these experiences one experiences completely, the mind will be very firm and one-pointed in its meditation object, and then it will experience sukha, or happiness, pleasure. In the beginning of the practice, that act of putting your attention on the breathing, establishing attention on the breath, that is what we call vitakka. And that act of sustaining awareness on the breath, you could say thinking or pondering about the breath, this is what they call vitakka. One is not thinking about other things, pondering other things, one is just thinking about the breath, pondering the breath. This is vichara. When one is establishing awareness on the breath, there's vitakka. One is pondering the breath, there's vichara. And piti arises, and sukha arises. There's pleasurable interest in the meditation object, and there's feelings of happiness, of rapture. Then the mind will be very firm and one-pointed on its object. As the mind becomes more and more refined, mindfulness becomes more and more refined, and the mind becomes one-pointed, focused on the breath, the actual physical feeling of the breath will subside or disappear, and you'll be left with this one-pointed knowing. With these 5 factors, vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, and the final one, ekaggata, one-pointed or focused attention on the breath. When all those 5 factors are present, then, for instance, the mind might hear a sound. You might hear a sound, but the mind won't be bothered by that sound. It won't go out to that sound. This, you could say, the mind has become calm at the first level, or the preliminary level of calm. The mind will be very still and withdrawn inside itself, with no thinking, no proliferation or wandering thoughts. You could say that the mind of the meditator that has reached this stage is the mind that is practicing the path or marga. It's a mind that is progressing along the path. It's restrained and peaceful from all different sense objects, mind objects, thoughts. The mind doesn't wander or stray off to the left or to the right, above or below. It's very centered, one-pointed, in the middle of things. Having been like this, in this state of stillness, one-pointedness for a certain period of time, the mind will then withdraw or come out of that state and start to experience thoughts and sense objects again. When that happens, when the mind starts to think, to wander again, or to experience different sense objects, mindfulness will immediately be there to see what happens, to see the mind as it starts to move. You will see very clearly that if the mind moves out from this place of one-pointedness, if it starts to move off following a thought or a sense object, then that will be the cause for it to suffer in some way. But if the mind is able to catch itself as it starts to move off from the place of peace with a thought, following a sense object, if it catches itself and then lets go of that, then it won't lead on to any suffering, it won't suffer. If the mind is truly calm, then as it experiences different sense objects and thoughts, wisdom or insight will see very clearly that these are the source of suffering if it attaches to them, and it won't let the mind attach to them. This is the benefit or the purpose of calming the mind, because it provides a foundation for mindfulness and insight, which will lead the mind to freedom from suffering or liberation from suffering. So practicing sitting meditation like this is the beginning of the practice, which is something you should all try to do and endure the difficulties or obstacles that you might face as you practice like this. It's quite natural that some days you'll feel more peaceful, experience more peace. Other days you might be very confused, agitated. You should aim to look after your mind from the very first moment when you wake up in the morning, to practice mindfulness and to develop samadhi and look after your mind at all times. If you don't try practicing mindfulness throughout the day, from the time you get up in the morning, then you'll tend to be thinking, proliferating, imagining all sorts of things throughout the day. And even if you come in the evening to sit meditation, it'll be very difficult to calm the mind down, to get much peace if you haven't been thinking about or practicing mindfulness throughout the day. And the things that are obstacles, or the things which will make us not peaceful, they're around us all the time, they exist all the time. These obstacles or hindrances to peace of mind are in short, attraction and aversion, sleepiness and depression, agitation, restlessness and irritation, and doubt and uncertainty. So to help deal with these different hindrances and help arrest them from the beginning, we have to use various tools in the practice, such as the practice of dana or generosity and renunciation, and the keeping of precepts, sila, or moral restraint. The practice of spreading loving kindness or metta is one technique for cooling the mind. This can be a very important tool to support the practice of meditation and support the arising of samadhi. And whatever level of samadhi you can attain, use that as the foundation or the basis for contemplating the three characteristics of impermanence, suffering and not self. Try and look after and watch over your mind from moment to moment and not let it get caught into any kind of suffering. As far as the practice of samadhi goes, maybe in the course of just one day you might only be able to make your mind a bit peaceful just once, or even only once in practicing meditation over a period of many days, you might only experience peace just once. That's quite natural in the beginning, but don't get discouraged. Keep putting effort into the practice. Keep being consistent with your effort. So I'll give you these reflections just as a basic introduction to the practice of meditation for today. I hope they're of use to you and that you understand what I've been saying. It's enough for the moment.